What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here for a little impromptu Saturday night live stream. I was basically just sitting around playing Marvel Snap because that's all that I do now when I'm not making videos or working. And I figured let's just fire up a good old live stream. Kind of the topic tonight's just kind of like market vibes. Where we at? We buying? We selling? What are we looking for? Price targets, that sort of stuff. I put the bat signal out, and we have two special guests, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring them on right out the get. We'll probably start chatting, and if you guys have any questions or whatever, feel free to throw them in as we'll move in through here. First, returning member, fresh from the hot tub, Dustin, aka Sports Card Dad, and then
right off and jumped on.
Friend of the channel, but I think this actually might be the first time on my channel. Is that correct, Swags? Is this your first time on mine?
Yeah, I think this is probably the first time I've actually been able to make a live. So happy to be on, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah. Everyone knows where to find Dustin. Swaggle House, you want to give people your info real quick off the top, because my audience may be slightly less familiar with you.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Swaggle Hoss. My YouTube channel is Swaggle Hoss Comics and Games, and I mostly talk about comic books. But I try to keep tabs from time to time on the other collectible markets, just so I can speak about comic books in a more broader sense sometimes. So I've been a fan of Neo's channel for a while, and I think I've caught some of Dustin's videos as well from time to time. So happy to be on with you guys. And if you're into comic books, you can check out my YouTube.
Yeah. Swag's got some pretty good content. I've joined a number of your comic book roundtables and stuff over the last, I don't know, year or year and a half, probably.
Yeah.
I don't even know how we got connected. I think we just commented on each other's random videos one day, like, oh wait, we both watch each other.
yeah. I think basically, yeah.
So, and then Dustin, Sports Card Dad, aka Mini Rudy Rants. How are you feeling fresh off your, screw the upper management of sports cards and giggities?
I'm feeling great, man. I've never been better. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I've been inspired by Rudy. He's living through me. It's kind of like in what is it, Ghostbusters 2, where the guy in the painting comes out and takes over the body of the whatever the guy takes care of it. It's kind of like that. Yeah, it's inspiring.
I'll say hi to chat. There's a bunch of people in chat saying hello, so I'll just do a broad hello, everybody, and we'll get to some comments here as we move through. Swag, do you watch Alpha Investments?
Yeah, I love Rudy. Yeah, he's
awesome. I feel like every content creator loves Rudy, just because, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you have to have respect for, especially because he's been doing it for 6 or 7 years, or 6.9 years, as he says. But
yeah,
for us, we've been on for a few years or a couple of years. So anyone that makes content that often, you respect the content game. It's a lot.
Yeah, and I think he's a good example of someone who can speak about a very niche thing, but make it wide enough so that there's however many people are, sub to his channel and interested in hearing him talk about Magic, even if they I barely collect Magic, even though I'm into it, but I like watching everything he talks about.
Yeah, he can be talking about anything.
I guess you would kind of keep tabs, because you did you work for Watt. Not directly, but you've done explain your day job or
Well, I work as a creative and in entertainment and stuff like that. So I've often worked for Wizards in a freelance capacity. So it's interesting to see a lot of the product that I've worked on, then follow it kind of in the secondary market and see how it performs and stuff. So it's kind of fun to pay attention to Alpha Investments for that reason.
Yeah, you had a cinematic on the new set release, didn't you?
Yeah.
I thought I saw you talk about that on one of your streams. Chat wants to know, why is Neo in 4K and Dustin's in 120p?
I'm so committed to the 80s nostalgia that I'm actually using one of those 80s camcorders. I just have that linked up to my laptop. So I have a special adapter. Yeah, it's the old family camcorder hooked up.
I think last time you were on, your internet was, or no, when me and Steve were on with you, your internet wouldn't stay connected. So Dustin just being able to talk and it not cutting out as a win.
And I've got fiber internet. It's not like I'm on dial-up or whatever, or I live way out in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know. Yeah, no promises, but I have no idea what's up with my internet.
You seem pretty strong tonight. I'm also using a 4K camera. Are you on your phone, Dustin, or?
I'm just on my Mac. Yeah, my Mac.
Yeah, Dustin's on a webcam.
Yeah, the webcam. It's the webcam. It's the webcam.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, my general topic tonight was just kind of market chit chat and vibes and just kind of where everyone's at. Swaggle, you've done I really enjoy like your index videos that you've
Mm.
done recently.
Yeah.
Kind of like tracking like key comic books and building a list of kind of just to get a general vibe of the market. Yeah, I did the video on Monday where I was talking about prices resetting to 2020. Do you have like a general, like if you see a price, like where do you think things settle back to like 2019, 2020? Like where's your jump in point? Like if something gets back to like sub 2020, are you like, if it's a key, are you like almost buying it just out of, just because it's so cheap? Or do you think we get actually like much lower than pre-pandemic prices?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's like it's one that I think about in a couple different levels. I feel like the short of it is like I don't think we're going to be going much below like 2020 prices. I think if anything, it's probably going to like trade sideways along 2020 prices. And so for that reason, my approach has been like, if I see a key book that is selling at around its 2020 price, I mean, if it's something that I actually want, like, I mean, I probably will pull the trigger and pick it up, because it feels like to me, I mean, outside of it, whatever's happening in the economy, sometimes I just do like the, I don't know what you call it, like the eyeball test, where I think to myself, okay, are there more comic collectors now in 2022 than there were in 2020? Like certainly 2021 brought a lot in, and there's probably been a lot of churn. So just simply based on like volume, and by that logic, like 2020 prices should hold, generally speaking, because there's going to be just that many more people presumably that want to have comic books. Now, of course, money might be tight and we might test, some prices, but it would be my guess that at a certain point, as things get better, the index rocket ship will kind of correct really, really fast all of a sudden and kind of get back in line. So to bring it back to your question, I kind of think of it in terms of like, yeah, if I see a book at a 2020 price, or even if I see a key that I really, really want, and it's like I look at the 2020 price and then I kind of do like okay, year over year, 15% increase. Is it kind of selling in line to like what a trend line would look like? That would make me consider picking it up as well, even though a lot of prices are correcting. And generally speaking, that seems to be what we've seen so far with when books like have crashed. It's like really they've just crashed to like the number that they probably should have been if things didn't blow up in 2021.
Yeah, I liked your trend line stuff where you're like, well, if this book would have just kept doing its like normal 5% or whatever, it's kind of like coming back down to that point.
Yeah.
And where it runs into that, that's where it's like, from my perspective, it's like on my radar then. I might not be running out to buy it, but now it's like instantly on my watch list of like, okay, like my eyeballs are on this, because if it goes way below this number, that feels like it overcorrected almost.
Yeah. And there are a lot of the examples of those types of comics. And like you talked about like the Morbius one on one of your videos recently.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a lot of the ones that, got negatively impacted as well from the reception of their movies, like Morbius, or like Moon Knight is another comic. Like if you look at his,
I think
comics,
Shang-Chi was
like,
another one that I was talking about.
Shang-Chi, like those ones actually are trading below. And so, who knows? I mean, maybe everything goes to zero and, it's all completely worthless, but like those are ones that in particular seem like as good an opportunity to buy them, if any, if you actually really want them,
Yeah. Dustin, he mentioned about, I think we feel the same on the sports card side. Like a lot of people came in and a lot of people left also. Do you feel like most of those people have flushed out at this point, or are we still like in the tail end of the clean out phase? Or do you think the people that are still like actively going to shows and stuff right now, are they in it now? Or, do we still have some just pandemic hop-arounds?
I've got a few different answers to this. So kind
Okay.
of, yeah.
Spicy town.
Yeah. I mean, one thought I just had too is if we go back to 2020 and we're looking at prices and then we're looking at prices today, the one thing that's very different, or that we obviously have to take into account, is just the backlog that CGC had and that PSA had. I mean, we're talking about like millions of comic books cards that went through that process. And now we've got all these graded copies that are out in the marketplace. It's actually kind of amazing that prices have held the way that they have, given the amount of graded supply that has hit the market. over the last 2 years. So, and I agree with Swagglehouse, and I think it's the same on the sports card side, that there's no doubt that there's more people in today than there were in 2019. Not even, to me, that's not even a question. I think there's a lot more potential buyers. But yeah, I think it's just I don't know if it's people that are unsure about today's prices as it is more of like what's coming in the US economy. Basically just like, should I buy this now, or is it just going to get worse and maybe I get it for lower in 6 months? Whereas maybe if we see that, if we see things kind of taper back and go the other way, then people start kind of buying again because they're like, oh, okay, it's starting to kind of correct back. Now I need to get in or whatever. But I think we've just kind of had this downward trend, at least on the sports card side. I can't speak for the comic book side as much, but on the sports card side, it's been kind of a trend down. I'm speaking generally where, if we're talking about 52 manholes, those are still going up. Obviously there's outliers, but modern, ultra modern stuff has been trending downward, but I don't think it trends downward forever. I do think that there is some sort of a bottom at some point. So, and we won't know the bottom until we get there.
Or 6 months past it. Yeah.
Exactly.
We'll look back and be like, oh man, why didn't I buy that?
Yeah. It does feel like it's my worry too, is it's like, is there going to be that, like, all of a sudden in a week or like in a 3 to 4 week stretch, at some point in, like, say July of 2023, like all of a sudden it's like, well, what's happening? Like everything is going crazy all of a sudden and people get that FOMO. I could definitely see it kind of correcting pretty fast, but it does seem like, yeah, I think it's interesting to listen to you, Dustin, because it's like, again, I'm not in the sports card world, but everything you say feels like if you just inserted the word comics, it'd be like, yeah, that sounds right to me as well. And
a lot of the big talk is inflation and interest rates. And really, like, Powell has basically said, like, we're going to continue along this path and continue raising rates. And it's not to say that if they raise rates, it automatically means that asset prices move downward. But again, it's just kind of, it's not positive news. Well, once we start to get an inkling of positive news, the thing that's shocking to me, I'm not going to go off on this, Neo, you can change the subject, but stock market the Dow Jones has held up pretty well considering we've had, like, interest rates going up. Usually that's an inverse effect on that. And it just hasn't had that sort of effect. So, who knows, I suppose. But anyway, I won't get too off topic there.
No, you're good.
It's
Swaghouse, do you feel, say, like, to a similar point on what I asked Dustin, do you feel most of the people that kind of like came into comics during the boom just like for the financial side of it, do you feel like you guys have kind of like flushed a lot of those people out? Like the people that have come in that were like just here for the quick buck have kind of done their thing, either made some money, lost some money, whatever, and they're kind of like on to the next thing. And the people that like were true, like came in during that time, but were like, oh, you know what, this is actually kind of cool, I'm going to hang around in this. Maybe not as intense as I was. Do you feel like you guys have kind of like gone through your flush out period too?
I think so. I think that that's kind of exactly what the feeling is, at least from my perspective. And it feels a lot like, in sports, I assume there is kind of this correlation of what's happening specifically, in, say, playoffs and games and stuff. Like in our world, obviously it's like, okay, this movie's coming out, trailer drops, everyone gets FOMO, everyone purchases, and the value or the price goes up crazy in the trailer. And I think that was the game, and people clearly saw that, and people made a lot of money, like flipping, Eternals books or Shang-Chi books and things like that. And then all of a sudden that just kind of stopped because everyone caught wind of the game. And all of a sudden everybody was trying to do the, like, I'm going to flip it during the trailer. And it, suddenly it was like all this downward pressure because everybody was listing their book, after the trailer would come out. And ironically, that would have been a better time to buy a lot of books. So, like, that's kind of what happened. I think a lot of people who were in it for that quick flip are like, okay, they're probably out of it now. And now it's like, as things kind of level off and correct and adjust, it's, I think a lot of people are just sort of figuring out like, okay, this is more of a longer term type of hold. If I'm somebody who wants to buy, like, whatever, a cool X-Men book and have it for like 3 years, I'm probably not going to see it go up in price unless I hold it for, 3 to 4 years. So that's kind of where we are now.
CK Sports Card says he's getting the feeling we're nearing the bottom. We were actually talking about this pre-stream right before we got going. I think personally the bottom, if I had to just blindly guess, I think things get cheaper through the new year. at minimum. And then I think someone else later in chat said, the layoffs haven't even gotten here yet. And that's kind of where my mind immediately jumps to, like, as much as it sucks to talk about, like, there's probably going to be layoffs after the first of the year with a lot of like Fortune 50 companies, maybe even, Fortune 500 companies after the first of the year. And then I think we could potentially see more of a dip than what your guys is kind of, I know predicting the bottom's like a fool's errand, but I do feel like a lot of things are going to trend cheaper between now and say March than before things start coming back up the other side again at minimum. Any thoughts on that? I'll go with Dustin first.
Yeah, the way that I'm thinking, and obviously can't predict the future, but I'm looking at kind of the next 90 days as more of the same, kind of like what you're speaking of. And also January is also a terrible retail month, coming off the holidays. So January is where everything's kind of cheap anyway, as far as just like consumer goods. So, I mean, I guess that my thought is like, are sports cards going to skyrocket in January? I don't think that they will, based on just kind of like the macroeconomic stuff. But I think AIH might have said in the chat, but Powell had hinted that maybe he's not raising rates, heading into that kind of after the first part of the year. So yeah, maybe February, March, April, they chill out a little bit, and honestly, like just a little inkling of good news. And you see like spikes in the Dow where it's like inflation came back, CPI report was 7.7 instead of 7.9. It's still not good, but they expect it to be 7.9 at 7.7. Dow Jones shoots up. It's like, it's not even like amazing news. It's like, we're just looking for like a little bit of good news. So I don't know. I do think that, I think the next 90 days are kind of like, I'm kind of trying to get in on certain things, but I think the one thing, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but the last few years has helped me to really kind of get into exactly which comic books and also which cards I'm zeroing in on that were very expensive that now are coming down to a price where I'm like just targeting them if they get down to a certain point. And for like a lot of stuff, it's just mid-grade for me, whether we're talking about vintage cards or Silver Age or Golden Age comics. I've been looking actually a lot at Silver Age and Golden Age DC because I do think that they're going to turn around kind of their universe. But also, I like that new Batman movie that came out. I like, the new Joker, not new Joker, but the Joker movie that came out was different. And I just think those characters aren't going anywhere anytime soon. Whereas like the Marvel stuff, their movies are just so dominant. And it's just like, there's always so much, fervor around kind of the Marvel stuff. I'm like, man, there's so many cool DC things that are not quite as expensive as the Marvel, but are still important in the grand scheme of things. So that's where I've actually been focused, as opposed to looking at like, Fantastic 448 or 50 or, kind of some of those, trying to get ahead of some of that. I feel like the spec is already in on a lot of that stuff for like the X-Men or the Fantastic Four. And I'm just looking at some of the DC. Long answer to your question.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. With the DC stuff, I think a lot of it, seems like there's some good opportunities, depending on, of course, case by case, like depending on which ones you look at, but it does feel like there's some definitely some good books in there. To go back to Neo's questions about when the bottom is, it's interesting because I've been trying to like pay attention to all the different types of spaces. We're talking about backstage. We look at like, okay, what is crypto doing, and what's like the S&P doing, and then what's cards doing, and what's comics doing, and like where are all these things correlated. And it does certainly feel like a lot of people are talking about maybe by February or March, you might start to see a bottom. At least this is what people say in say things like Bitcoin and things like that. And because historical performance of like, okay, here are other bear markets and here are some comparables and here are like other like kind of time frames and windows of what these things look like. And looking at my index, it feels like, okay, yeah, that actually could also seemingly be true with comics, because that would be kind of testing the bottom of the trend line or going even a little bit past it and then kind of shooting back up. So that would sort of be my guess, would be kind of around that time. And then, but it'll be interesting to see. It's like, once we get there, maybe we're just going to go sideways for like, 6 months or so. And you'll still kind of have time to like buy that key comic that you want, because the prices will just be doing this the whole time. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I think maybe you'll start to see it trending upward. But I would say, if I'm just kind of approaching these next like 3 months or so. It's like generally waiting on the sidelines, but also if I see something and it's like kind of in line to what I think the like bottom of it would be anyway, like I'll pick it up, you know.
I think the question too is for every individual, it's like, are we trying to time the bottom to where we've got all of our cash right here? And then we're like, all right, we've
Right.
identified what we think is a bottom and we're going all in with all, or are we like dollar cost averaging down, which I think
Right.
we're probably doing that to where we're dollar cost averaging. Cause like for me, I'm kind of like, well, could it be lower? Yeah, I guess, but it's at all time low. It's at like a pretty all time low, or it hasn't been this low in a long time. I'm comfortable with the price,
Right.
so
So especially if it's like something you're gonna, in theory, I'm gonna hold this for whatever 3 years anyway.
Yeah.
So like, what's the difference if I
Right.
overspend by $300?
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is that us and just generally speaking, I think collectors, regardless of category, I think right now I've kind of gotten back to, if you are buying, you're buying to Swaggle's point, like you're actually buying something that you kind of want to own, versus previously we were just buying because we thought we could make 10% on it or 30%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like now, if I'm pulling the trigger on something, it's very much like the X-Men 101 that I was looking at on Monday. That's a book I've wanted forever, in somewhere between a 9.2 and a 9.6. And I was like, okay, one's up for auction. If this comes in at the price that I want, I'll pull the trigger on it. But that's not something that I'm looking to sell in 3 to 6 months. That's something that would go on the wall behind me, and I would probably hold it for a very long period of time potentially. And same way with sports cards. Like I look at cards and I'm like very targeted right now on what I want to pull the trigger on. Like pretty much anything that I'm looking to buy is not something that I think I'll be like flipping in 3 to 6 months.
That's
Are
the
you
thing
that
that's
kind of same
interesting.
headspace, Dustin?
Well, that's what's interesting about comics is like with cards, like say you love Luca. Okay, well, how many cards does he have? Like a zillion, even, and he's only been in the league for 4 years or whatever, I mean,
Yeah.
but for you, like you're an X-Men collector. So, I mean, how many keys are there really that you're chasing? Maybe 10,
A lot, but
maybe a dozen that are really important. Maybe a dozen.
yeah,
maybe
and I have a decent chunk of them already, actually, but there's definitely some big ones that I'm missing,
But that's what I mean. Like if there's like 15 to 20, let's just say, that are
Yeah.
important books that you want, that you would probably hold it. Like if you had to hold on to it for a long, long period of time, then you're fine with that. Whereas with cards, like I could look at Tom Brady cards and I'm looking at a card and then I'm like, oh, damn, there's a card I've never seen before. I like that. Like literally you can get distracted. There's so many different cards, it's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, that was a big part of the appeal when I hopped back in the comic books in 2020, was the fact that, to your point, Dustin, if I want the first appearance of the one that I always use for this example is New Mutants 98. If I want the first appearance of Deadpool, there's a lot of those by comic book standards, but there's his first appearance is New Mutants 98. That's it. There's not a Purple Disco. There's not a Prism, a Select, an Optic, an NT, a Logo Man, this, that, and the other thing. There's a New Mutants 98 and a CGC 98, and I don't know, Swags, there's probably a couple 99s on the census for that book.
Yeah, or maybe like a Rob Liefeld auto, a yellow.
Yeah, like there's no parallels. Like that's the book. Like that's it. And that's kind of appealing with how sports cards have kind of gotten parallel crazy. And don't get me wrong, modern comic books, we could go down a rabbit hole about variant covers and all that nonsense.
Do you think that
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say in cards, is it like when people kind of get their whatever, like their Grail cards and stuff? Like, do you find that there's a lot of Grail or collector or set collectors? So if I'm like a Tom Brady fan, it's like I don't just get his rookie. It's like no. Like most people are like, I need the Power 5 of Tom Brady or however many like key cards are there. Is that kind of how it goes in sports cards?
Interesting point. There's so many levels.
Yeah.
Like Tom Brady, what's the most expensive Tom Brady card? $1 million, maybe, or
probably his Contenders rookie auto,
whatever. So I think what a lot of times what happens in sports cards is there's always kind of a leveling up that's happening. And even if it's it might even be like the Bowman Chrome might be the most expensive one that you're ever going to have, and maybe it's a $10,000 PSA 10, and maybe you have the 7 and you're working up to an 8 and a 9 and a 10. But you'll never get to the Contenders auto, that's $500,000 or whatever. So that's
it's tricky on the sports card side because it really depends on your budget, kind of with comics too, but like it's not, if you want an AF-15 and that's your Tom Brady, you're looking at an AF-15 and maybe an ASM-1 as like the ultimate grails for Spider-Man potentially.
Right.
And then it's like, depends on what rogue gallery villain you want his first appearance of. But like ASM-1 and AF-15 are like the two clear cut 1 and, 2 on that list.
Right.
Brady, I don't even know, beyond the contenders, where it would even go from there. It's really person specific at that point, because to Dustin's point, there's so many options. So it gets muddied very quickly on like what the next best card is, or maybe like the third best card. It gets very tricky very quickly.
It's
Gotcha.
part of
Very
it's part of-
expensive too,
it's part
because
of the
there's just so many
fun.
options.
Yeah, I guess it's part of the fun, but it's also not as, it's like, it's not as clear though, for a collector or / investor or whatever. I mean, I have people that reach out to me all the time, like, hey, have you ever seen this? There's this like Tom Brady auto rookie numbered out of 25 that no one ever knew was released. It's like, no, what? I mean,
Right.
stuff just comes out of the woodwork. Whereas I think like Silver Age, Golden Age comics are probably similar to like vintage sports cards, where they've got one rookie card,
Right.
whatever.
How do you
Yeah,
approach
I
your
guess
Brees
it's more.
collection, Dustin? Dustin PC's Drew Brees. Like, what's your thought process on, like, do you have like a grail list of like, I have to own these for X number of cards before I feel satisfied? Or
Yeah, so for Breeze, the big grail would be, and part of this is kind of price point, like we talked about. It's way different with Breeze than it is for Tom Brady. But like my grail would be the black refractor. It's numbered out of 100. The top's chrome. I don't even really care about the grade, but it ranges anywhere from probably like $2,000 to $10,000, probably depending on grade. The one that's more that's closer for me is just the regular refractor top's chrome. It's numbered out of 999. That one also kind of ranges in price, but a lot less expensive, obviously, than the black one. But as far as just kind of like what I've just been daily collecting for him, I've gotten some random stuff, but 2012 to 2018 Prism colored stuff. So whether it be silver Prism or gold or Topps Chrome, gold or black refractors or whatever, kind of that color match for the Saints. I've been doing that because the prices on that stuff has come way down, and I've been doing the same for Tom Brady too. So it's funny because with Tom Brady, there's a lot of rookie card options with him in a Michigan jersey or whatever, but I've actually been really buying more of kind of his, numbered prisms or refractors than actually getting a rookie card. So, and you see people do the same thing with like LeBron, he's got refractors and different stuff. So yeah, for Brady, it's just a couple of rookie cards and then those prisms. And that's really my focus. I'm not going to try to get too crazy. That's kind of where I want to be.
Right. Yeah, like my main PC player is LeBron. It would cost me like $1 quadrillion to try to nail off like the grail. An exquisite LeBron is like, $500,000. I don't even know. Probably more than that for a rookie. Like his stuff gets insane. So in sports cards, it's much more price point dependent. On comics, I guess the equivalent would be, any grade or what's the saying? I'm blanking on the saying.
Low grade better than no grade.
Yes, low grade better than no grade. It'd be like, cool, let me get this 0.5 detached cover of this ASM-1 because I have to have an ASM-1 or whatever the book is.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even if it's in pieces.
On that note, Swaggle House. Well, what do you guys think about the page? Like I saw one that was like Hulk #1 and it was like a page, like page 1 or something. So there's no cover, there's no book. It's just like page 1 of Hulk #1. No, it's CGC, no grade. It's cool. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know how much I would pay for it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's weird. It's like I don't because when we're talking about like those types of things, like people are still paying like whatever. Just off top, I'm getting guess. It's still like a $3,000 or $4,000 purchase, and it just begs the question of like, well, yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know everyone's financial situations, and yeah, it's going to take you $10,000 to get a real Incredible Hulk comic book, but like, I don't know. It seems like a better thing to do to just keep saving, instead of go for the page. But I do think that there are some comics that maybe it's worth it. Like if you're talking about like an Action Comics one, like the first Superman, that's Golden Age and you can afford a page, like maybe that's kind of cool. I think that there's probably very, very specific situations where it's a cool thing to do. The other thing I think is maybe people Frankenstein some stuff, because there's, you could buy some pages, and I think that there's been stories of people who have like found pages of old comics and then hodgepodge, put them all together and found a cover, or like maybe one book was missing a certain page and they found the page and they like put it together, and you still get a green label, but that, there's going to be some value in that. So I think that makes sense to pick up those pieces.
I saw a very clean X-Men 1 cover pop up. Oh, I don't remember when it was, a couple weeks ago. And I was like, let me watch this. Because I was like, and I never paid attention to individual page pricing. And I'm like, if this actually went for like a reasonable number, I would almost get in on it just for the display piece factor.
Yeah.
It was a clean cover. It was like, if you were just looking at the cover and didn't realize that the rest of the book wasn't there, it would have been like a mid to upper mid grade. And it went for like 5 or 6K. And I'm like, nope.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, like that's the thing where it's like
probably. So X-Men 1s were a little higher then.
Yeah,
you can get like a 2.5 right now. I think for like under 8K, probably cash.
Yeah, I think if you what you're describing, like, I mean, yeah, that'd be pretty cool actually. If you like, I could imagine you could frame it, in like a rectangular custom frame and have the front and back cover, nicely displayed. That'd be pretty cool. Or if it was really like, hey, I have a coverless copy over here, I need a cover, I could put a book together. That makes a lot of sense if you can make the money side work out. I think that whole side of it is really interesting, and sometimes it definitely has value.
Question in the chat for Swags, and you don't have to get, I know that you might do follow-up videos on this.
Oh, yeah.
Any updates on the scam artist, dude? And Dustin, just to fill you in really quickly, what did you get taken for? Like 8K,
like five grand of bucks. Yeah, I did a TLDR. I did a trade with someone that's kind of stupid, but I was sending some books and he was going to send one back, and basically I got scammed. I got ghosted on. And so I as far as the update answer to that question, I do have updates, but I don't have like a update enough to do like, say, a video update about it, which like, I'll definitely do a video update at some point. But I've been talking to like a detective out in Chicago, which is the area that person is in. And I actually have a private investigator doing some stuff as well. So I think that there will be some resolution at some point, which will be fun to find out. But yeah, it's a cautionary tale.
Interesting.
Lesson learned.
Yeah, lesson learned for sure.
Yeah, don't do trades. What's up, Alonzo? What's up, Filmington in the mentions or in the chat with the sad face emoji? Filmington, you may or may not have an invite to this live stream in your DMs, sir, that you have not read yet.
So what's going on with sports cards right now? Is this?
It's all going.
I always think this is it's all going to zero. But this is kind of an interesting time, right? Because this is always usually the like, or at least maybe last month really was a better example of like everything is going on, right? Where you got baseball, basketball, football, everything is going on at the same time. Is that usually when prices are spread, like money is spread across many different things, and then therefore it's like cheaper this month? Or is it like, is that when everyone is hyped about everything?
Personally, I think it's kind of tricky to tell right now, because like a card price staying stable is almost a win right now. Like if you would look at a chart and graph and it's not in the red, but it's not in the green, it's just flat, like that's almost a win, because almost everything to some degree or another is slightly trending down. Baseball's kind of quiet right now. That wrapped up, because as you get deeper into the individual season's playoffs, there's less and less focus, so it kind of starts to naturally dwindle itself down. But we're definitely in the quiet time for baseball. From a singles perspective, there's a lot of new product coming out for baseball right now. Basketball is kind of getting overshadowed by football, but we're kind of in like the middle of football, which is kind of like, we think we know who's good, but we're not really sure. Players that we thought were good aren't, and some guys are still surprising. And with the current state of the market, it's just kind of weird all around. So it's kind of a tough question to answer, because I don't know that we're in normal territory for that. I don't know, Dustin, you have any different takes on that?
I just think that over the last 12 months and continuing on, we've had kind of whales and mini whales, as I like to call them, baby whales that are getting out. I think there's actually people that got in because they're wealthy buddies, kind of a crew that got in together. And I think that there's some people that are kind of like, you know what, cash is king again, and I could sell this off and buy a house or whatever. So I think the people that are like, yeah, cards are okay, and I'm going to move on to something else. They're moving on. But I do think that there's also whales, mini whales that are buying those things. They're just buying them at lesser, prices. So, a card that was 100 grand, maybe it's selling for 50 now, which is like, wow, that's gone way down. But then like 5 years ago, that card that's now 50 was like 10,
Right.
So it's like, I think that there's a lot of big money that's still in, but I think we're still going through a little bit of churn where there's people that got in, spent a lot of money, and then are moving out, So
Right.
I think that that's part of the big correction.
Do you think people are like straight up liquidating, cashing out, and leaving, or do you think people are just like, I'm checked out, I'm just going to let my stuff collect dust, and I'm just not buying anymore?
I think people are kind of in the prune stage. I mean, I'll speak to this personally. I've definitely taken some hard looks at my card case and gone, okay, like this isn't going anywhere. I don't know that I really need this one. I'd rather have the cash, even if I'm eating a loss on it, because I'd
Right.
rather just have the cash in the fun money pile. That if something comes up that I really want, I would rather just kind of like, I don't know, like say this random stack of slabs of stuff I don't care about that much. I would rather just sell it now at a loss and have this turned into dollar bills. So when
Right.
the thing comes up that I want, I could essentially just trade all this stuff for maybe the one thing that I actually want, like in the collection at that time. Like that's kind of where
Yeah.
I'm at
Yeah.
right now mentally.
I'm kind of similar to where like a lot of people, I think they've got some cash, but they're they're kind of card rich, if you will. Like they've got cards that are worth some money or comic books that are worth some money. And it's kind of like, man, now that prices are coming down, maybe I could get into like an X-Men 1, or maybe I could get into like, whatever card. And like what Rob's saying, like I could just move these cards into cash and get into that thing. I do think a lot of people are looking at that more on the lower to mid end, like where I am. At the high end, that's a whole different game. But yeah, I do think there's some consolidation thought that's happening because over the last few years, we've kind of identified too, like what's the stuff I really want? You kind of like, you're going through, you're buying, you're doing the thing. And now you're like, okay, like the stuff I really want is actually coming down in price. So how do we get it?
Yeah, that's true for sure. I mean, definitely a lot of stuff that felt like, oh, okay, this was untouchable is now like, oh, okay, maybe this is doable again. And so, yeah, it's the kind of the middle key comic books, I think, are the ones that I find interesting, where it's like, people still lose their mind about random news announcement of whatever, worthless spec character that all of a sudden now this is like a $50 key. But like, there's interesting comics that are like, I don't know, like Abomination's first appearance, which it's like cool character, and at one point was $150 key, and now it's kind of more like a $60 and $70 comic and stuff like that. So there's interesting, those types of books too, that I feel like those are the ones that are really getting left behind, because now people have their eye on like, maybe I can afford an AF-15 like I didn't think I could.
Yeah, but on the flip, I'm almost I'm watching a lot of those like in between keys, whatever term you kind of want to come up with it. Well, I'll give you a perfect example of one that fits right into this. I need an X-Men 130, which is the first appearance of Dazzler.
Dazzler, yeah.
The Dark Phoenix run. She is. I mean, it's a classic. It's an X-Men. It's a minor X-Men key. She's a minor X-Men character, but it's part of Dark Phoenix, the Claremont run. Like it's a book every X-Men collector has to own, but it's not a mega key. You know what I mean? It's not, what is it, 129, which is like the first appearance of everybody. So that's one I've been watching in like a 9.6. They've been going for like 350 to 400. Does that get way cheaper? Maybe. I don't know. Like I could see that potentially falling some more, but I have my eyes on a lot of that stuff too, like those in-betweeners.
I think it's probably good to look at that. I think you're right though, because it's like, it was like last year, it's like, man, I would love to own Giant Size X-Men 1, but I can't afford it. So, hey, well, I'll get the Dazzler book, and at least I can have something that's kind of cool, and so now as people are looking the other way, yeah, there's like opportunity in that sense too, where it's like, okay, yeah, now you get to pick up a Dazzler book for really not that bad, you know, and it's still very cool. Like it's cool to have it, you know, regardless.
Yeah.
So
That's one I really want back. In 2018, I bought a Giant Size X-Men 2.5, and honestly, it looked pretty beat up. It just didn't look like a great copy. I bought it for like $300, and it went up to like $700 or $750, and I sold it. And I remember the guy, he messaged me and he was like, "Hey, did you have this pressed, clean and pressed?" And I'm like, no, I don't know. Like, I thought he was saying like he wanted to return it. I'm like, no, I didn't mess with it. Like, I didn't like mess it up, you know,
right.
but he was really like, I'm going to clean and press it. Like, if you haven't, you know, is basically what he didn't say that, but that's what he was trying to figure out. And I just didn't put two and two together. I was just like, wow, this book has gone up so much. And now I'm like, damn it, I wish I had kept that. But
Yeah.
It happens.
Do you have like mine's X-Men 1? That's like the one that I'm like, keep falling, baby. Like come into my lap. Like, do you have a big major key, Swaggle, that you're like that's like not right now, but man, if you come down just another couple more thousand or like another 30% or whatever, I forget what you're missing from your event because you're a big Avengers guy, right?
I'm a big Avengers guy. I mean, I got all the Avengers books that I need, but my Avengers 1, I'd still like to continue to trade up. But that's probably a little bit further down the line.
You already have one, so it's less
yeah,
of a priority.
yeah. But I mean, I'd love an X-Men 1 like you. I'd love a Tales of Suspense 39, first Iron Man. And then I'm trying to think like what are like some of the other really big ones that, you know,
I don't know
that
there was like one at the top of your list that you're like,
Yeah.
come to daddy.
Yeah, I'd say that those two are generally ones that I'm like, I'm keeping my eye on for sure. And I'm like, okay, yeah, as soon as they're in line to what I feel comfortable with, and you know, I'll try to get my hands on them.
The trick is not getting distracted by the other stuff because there's still a lot of other stuff that I want.
Yeah,
And it's
totally.
Like, that's kind of where my headspace is at right now. Like even on the 101 that I was looking at on Monday, like I could have bought it whatever it went for, like 1700 and felt pretty okay with it. But I'm like, man, I might rather just have that money sitting around if X-Men 1 gets cheaper. Like that was kind of nagging in the back of my mind when it got a little higher than what I wanted to spend on it. And I was like, it went above your price point, put the eBay app, put the phone down and walk away, let the auction end.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's good though. That's good. Like to be able to like know your number and then walk away. Cause like having faith that it's like, I think that this is still going to correct more. Cause my feeling is it's like, if it's not in the, you know, trend line of the like natural growth of what it in theory should have been doing, there will be a time that it eventually it hits that again. That's like my theory. It doesn't matter in terms of comics. That doesn't matter what grade you are, doesn't matter what key you are. At some point you're gonna retrace back to your line.
Yeah. Dustin, do you have anything that's like whether it's cards or comics that's like on the top of your
Honestly,
is there like a number one thing that you're like, oh come on, just keep falling?
I think that's really my problem is I'm into so many different things. I mean, I've got graded video games. I've got graded comic books. I've got graded starting lineups. I've got Masters of the Universe, from like 1983, like, I mean, there's just too much probably for me to kind of zero in on, but those to me feel like, and I should probably look at prices, but to me, I feel like they're probably out of range. I for some reason, I'm big into Hulk. I've got like a Hulk #4 that's a CGC 3.5. I just love those really early Incredible Hulk books.
Yeah, those are cool.
So like a Hulk 1 would probably be that for me. And it's a serious book. Yeah, I mean, it's like even in like I couldn't afford like half of the front cover, like it's a beast. But that one, just the cover and everything. But like you guys, I mean, whether it's X-Men 1 or Avengers 1, those are all, even Daredevil 1 was one that I almost pulled the trigger on because I think that cover is so damn cool. And like, not that I'm like a massive Daredevil fan, but just like the history with that book. And it is an important character. So yeah, I mean,
Daredevil 1 is one that I keep seeing because everyone has it. It's not rare. You know what I mean?
It's
like
not super rare, no.
Rails, they post like 3 a day, I feel like. But it's one that every time it pops up, and that's one that keeps getting cheaper and cheaper. And I keep being like, man, that in like a 3.5 feels pretty good if it presents well. Like and I'm not even like the biggest. I was never a big Daredevil fan until the Netflix show. Like, And
But
him potentially, him coming back. And I love Charlie Cox's portrayal of him. Kind of has me interested in potentially picking up a Daredevil one. Like that book would have never been on my list in the past, and now
it's such a badass cover, though.
it
Like it's
is.
just so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's definitely a cool one. I think it's kind of at that, like, it's. I just know this because off the top of my head with the Daredevil one, it's kind of right at $1,000 per grade point. So like a 3.0 would be 3,000, a 4.0
Mhm.
would be 4, and so it's like, but you don't always see it at that price, right? When people are selling it, they're always got it overmarked. But I'm just like, I think if it gets to that level where you see it consistently like that, I think that might be a good entry point into that book.
Yeah, we got Teapot in the house. What's up, Teapot? Filmington still hanging out. There was someone asked about Into the Spider-Verse boxes. Oh no, Criminal Mind, you got to price them right. Stuff moves if it's priced correctly, for sure.
Dustin, are you into Marvel cards at all?
I am. Yeah. So
Okay.
what's
So
funny,
you're in a
actually,
very
What's going
particular
on in the
niche,
Marvel
though,
card
right?
world?
Rob, I was going to ping you on this actually because
What do we got?
I just started looking harder at 90 MU PSA 10s and SGC 10s because now I see they're starting to finally hit eBay at like pretty cheap prices. Like those pops have moved up since I looked at it last. So I've been bidding on some of those. I just lost a Wolverine, but I bought. So Swaggle, I've been buying 2013 Fleer Retro Marvel, the Impel Autos, the 90,
Right.
91, and 92, because that's like, for me, that's the nostalgic. Those are the nostalgic sets. And I
Right.
just like those cards. They're cool looking cards. They've got the artist signature. They are pretty rare to find. I just bought a Daredevil 2013 auto for $120. I got a Black Panther 15 Fleer Retro for like $200. So on the Marvel side, everyone always talks about like the PMGs for Fleer Retro 13 and 15, and I just focus on those autos because I just think they're awesome. And then get them graded up. They're always raw, so they're always fairly inexpensive when they do pop up. I shouldn't say inexpensive, but if you can catch a good auction. So yeah, for Marvel cards, I'm looking at 90 MU in 10s. I'm looking at that now because I think it's a pretty decent time to take a look, and then the Fleer Retro stuff.
Do you feel like the collector base of like just Marvel cards in general, like what's your general sense, Rob? Like how active is it?
It's going through the same. I mean, you could rerun this entire conversation that we've had for the last 47 minutes and replace sports cards and comic books with Marvel cards, and the same stuff would apply. Like they're in the same place we are. Like Spider-Man Metal came out, it was super hyped, price soared. You're seeing pullbacks on that on the single side and the sealed wax side. Those boxes have come down a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit. Singles have come down way more. And then across the board, you're still seeing continued price corrections from when a lot of that stuff got their run-ups, like
Right.
Marvel PMGs or like to Dustin's point, 90 MU, kind of pick your poison there. That stuff is still correcting from its all-time highs of, February 2021, along with everything else. Low-end Marvel, I've been having a ton of luck with that in CGC slabs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what's the deal with the CGC coming in? Like, because I remember you were talking about like, oh, that could be really attractive as like a Marvel card, like kind of go to. Like, do you feel like are people still looking that way, or is it kind of still like because PSA prices and turnarounds are now back to normal, right?
Reasonable, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, PSA is still king in the secondary market, but I think CGC is instantly giving like SGC, which was probably second for Marvel, I would say. I don't know, Dustin, if you would probably agree with that. # sponsor.
Yep.
But I think CGC is pricing right at or near SGC values, which is pretty good right out of the gate, in my opinion.
I do think there's going to be loyalty there. Yeah, with the CGC cases for sure.
Yeah, and I've had really good success just moving low end base stuff. It costs $13 to $15 to grade. Because if you have a CGC Elite membership, that discount applies to CGC trading cards too. Right. So you could grade at $13.50 a card, and I've been getting them back in like 2 weeks. So I have like just random 92 Jim Lee
Right.
X-Men stuff laying around that I've been sending because I'm into the cards for nothing. So my cost basis is zero besides grading fees. And I get them back, and I could easily move them for, depending on how they grade, obviously, but 25 to, in some cases, over $100 a pop, depending on the grade. You know, like I had a Rogue and a CGC 10 that I sold for like 125, and just some of the base 9.5s. I'm only sending like key characters. You know, I'm not messing around with every single card, but I mean, you could easily, I mean, turning 15 into 30 doesn't sound like you're doing, you know, oh my Lord, you know, but I mean, but that's kind of where the market's at right now. Like you need to turn 15 into 30 because you're not turning 1,000 into 2,000 anymore.
I mean, but yeah, if you can consistently get that, that's still pretty darn good, you know?
Yeah, everything that I'm buying now, especially on the Marvel card side too, is just like long-term. I'm good. Like I'm buying it for a long-term hold. If I don't hold it for 20 years, and I don't, but like with 90MU, it's kind of to a point where now, granted, they're still going to go up on the pop report. It was heavily printed, but that is an important set, I think, in the history of Marvel cards. So 20 years from now, I think that Marvel MU 90 is going to be an important set. Same with like the 2013 Fleer retro stuff. They didn't make a ton of it. There is a lot of, you know, scarce cards in there. So 20 years down the road, I feel pretty good that I don't think that I'm going to lose money. I might not make anything. It might be worth exactly the same, but as long as it's kind of a decent store of value, then I feel pretty good about it. But
yeah,
I feel good.
These look.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, they just look really good.
I saw you had that card. The 10, the gold 10 is always, you know.
Yeah, I mean the 9.5s look, you know, fine, but the gold 10 is obviously. I mean, this would technically be a PSA 10 equivalent.
Yeah, yeah.
The 9.5.
Are they all gold 10s, or is there a 10 and a gold 10?
Both their 10s are gold, I think, but in the higher level one, the box is gold too, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Instead of being a blue outline.
Yeah, the 90MU and the Jim Lee stuff, that's the stuff that gives me the most nostalgia for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just sent in a bunch of I did a video on it earlier this week. The 94 Spider-Man set. Which is like the 92 Jim Lee, but it's all Bagley art. And it's all Spider-Man.
Yeah. That's cool.
So I sent almost 30 of those cards in this week. They just received them. They haven't been, they're checked into the mailroom, or they don't show up on my submission page yet. So I'm hoping to have those back for Christmas. Their turnaround times have been quick. Not SGC levels fast, but fast enough for me. Because there's really no, a Spider-Man card's not going to swing in value that much over the next 3 weeks to get it back super fast. Is CGC Comics, is their backlog basically like, where are they at right now?
It's
like,
yeah, it's totally gone. It's like so fast. Like literally people are getting kind of like you said, it's like 2-week turnaround type of stuff. So, you know, it's interesting. It's like either and then it kind of begs the question, like, I wonder if they're hurting a little bit because they, you know, maybe they did what they had to do to onboard more graders and staff and do the whole thing. And now the influx of inventory, or the stuff that their submissions must be down, you know, because they're able to turn around everything like extremely fast, especially.
So, and CBCS, they're still backlogged, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on with CBCS, but you know, I feel like, yeah, no, nobody does. Like, I feel like CBCS is not as well-oiled as CGC is at this moment.
Yeah.
But
because what we're seeing on the sports card side right now, but there's essentially 4 major players. You have PSA, you have SGC, you have Beckett, and then you have CSG/CGC.
Right.
It's kind of the 4th spot. And because we have all that competition, they're competing on price now. Like there's been, I don't know what, Dustin, each company's cut prices at least probably 3 times since the national to some degree or another.
They're all very close now. Yeah. And really all of them don't really have a backlog. And yeah, they're all kind of, it's very interesting. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch, I suppose.
So to your point, Swaggle, I wonder if CGC would lower prices to get more books in the door.
Oh yeah. You know, I haven't actually checked CGC prices lately, but off the top, I don't think that they've, from what I gather from places that you guys are talking about, like I don't think that they've done that yet. Where
No,
they're
because I figured that there'd be 47 videos about that if they
yeah,
if they lower
So
prices.
yeah, that would be interesting to see if they do drop it, because like I do wonder if people are still submitting in the same kind of numbers that they were. I have to assume that they're not.
Are people still specking on like modern, like the ultra modern just came out, like the variant covers? You send that into CGC because like on the sports card side, we're probably seeing less of that. You know, where it's like the
Yeah.
new parallel. I mean, people are sending them in, but not at the same rate they were 2 years ago.
Right. I think that that's probably it's probably paralleled, where it's like, you know, there's still going to be like new variants and all that stuff that come out that, you know, retailers are sending in whatever 100, 150, you know, just to get graded right away that week. But I assume that there's less than there were, and especially it's kind of like what you were talking about, Rob, where it's like I think the margin is, it's like, you know, people are maybe now making they're in a book for $5, they grade it for 30 and they sell it for 50. So like that's kind of their margin, as opposed to where maybe the margin was like sell it for 100, you know.
You
10 months
guys,
ago.
you guys need your version of Gemrate. That's what comics need. There's a Instagram handle. His name's Ryan.
Oh yeah, you
We
showed.
all call him Gemrate. He tracks all the grading companies.
Yeah,
Which actually you could probably. Well, I don't know how this would work for CGC Census because I don't know how it's laid out. You could just track the total. I don't know if there's a real easy way to see like the total number of books on the CGC Census at one time. Like
they
quick
have a
and dirty.
database. You could see it, but
So just start tracking those numbers. Like
Yeah.
what is it on, you know, even if you just did it once a week and see how many are getting added to the census every day. Because he's been doing it for I don't know what, Dustin, 2 years now or something. Gemrate has been.
Wow. Yep.
So we have like a huge data set of like what these companies like. We know PSA can do 1 million cards a month. Like we know that they could do that because they've done it multiple times. We know like SGC can do, I don't know, 300,000 cards in a month at most. So all of a sudden, if you start to see volume drop, you know, like, oh, well, I guess they're not getting as many submissions because their volume dropped 20% this month. So you kind of have that interesting tracking data, you know, to kind of see exactly what these grading companies are getting now that they don't have turnaround times. I don't know. For a comic book dedicated channel, does CGC need to drop their price to get books in? Sounds like a good video topic.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing. Maybe worth paying attention to see, because we don't have anyone in the hobby that I know of that is doing that type of work. So
what spurs on excitement on the comic book side? Because like for sports, it's always like draft classes. You have like an exciting rookie draft class, and then that pushes the product, whatever that's going to be. For comic books, is it like, you know, is it kind of the new Spider-Man series, or is it like a new artist that's coming up where people are like, oh, cool, there's a new artist that's coming out on this particular book? Like what's I'm not even talking about like the movie show side of things, but just, you know, the book, you know, like what's the excitement, or is it just more driven by the movies and the shows? You know,
yeah, I mean, I guess in the kind of the modern world, I'd say like to what you were getting at, like there's time to time there's like a new character in a storyline that it's like, oh, this is a big character, or, you know, there was a character that came out in one of the Black Panther comic books this year. His name is Tosin Aduye, and the machine behind it kind of came out that like, oh, Marvel's looking at this character to be like the Miles Morales Black Panther equivalent, right? Like
that's so there's spec around storylines and stuff.
So,
Okay.
So there's those types of characters, and you know, there's a couple a year, and then outside of that, I think it's really artist driven. You know, artists will come out and they'll just do a variant cover and whatever. It's just the aesthetics and the artist. This is just the cover. Everybody wants it, you know, and I think that just those tend to be the ones that move the market the most. And it's kind of unpredictable, although like, you know, if people are going to do like an ASM 300 cover homage with a shiny foil and do all those 90s tricks, like people are probably going to buy it. So those tend to get hot as well.
Man,
I was actually just looking at I was just searching.
Yeah.
Beat that to death. No, I was just going to say they've really beat that to death. ASM 300, like all the different. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you're a completionist who's like, I got to own every comic for ASM 300, it's like, I don't think you're ever going to complete it.
Yeah. To Swaggle's point, like I try to stay away from modern alt covers as much as possible, but I fall prey to a good Ghost Spider cover, and there are a lot of them. and I was just looking at the Peach Momoko Carnage
Yeah, the Peach
cover from
Momoko one.
NYCC. They've started hitting eBay in 9/8 already. So I would like one of those at a 9/8 just for a display purpose, because they're really not that expensive in the grand scheme of things. Like, unless it's like something super, super limited. But a lot of those generally just like cool looking covers you could get for, you know, like $100 at a 9/8. Like I'll FOMO buy into one of those all day long.
Right.
I have that book raw. Actually, I got it while I was at New York City Comic Con, but my copy was a little beat up. I didn't realize it until after the fact.
Another
but
sale
It's
that I
funny
wish
that you
I had.
mentioned that. What's
One
that?
book I wish I had back to was I had a Spawn. I think it's Spawn 1 black and white. It's the black and white version, so it's quite a bit more rare than the just the number 1. And it was signed in a red pen by McFarlane, which I know Todd McFarlane has signed probably like a billion. It's like Stan Lee's signature. He's signed it so many times, but Todd McFarlane's signature is so damn cool. And then it was on
Yeah,
like that.
does look good.
It was a 9.6, and I ended up selling it, you know, and I should have just kept it. But you know, that's another thing is like the legends like that, like Stan Lee and McFarlane, like they just signed so much that it's like, you know, I don't know. You're going to pay a huge premium for that auto. I don't know.
People, I mean, what's a McFarlane auto add to like a Spawn 1?
That's a good question. I think it probably adds a decent amount. Like if a Spawn 1, which is like a regular, I don't know off the top of my head,
book. You can find
let's say it's
anywhere you want.
$300. Like I would think that like a Todd McFarlane auto makes it like 900 all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like it all depends, but I do think that the Todd McFarlane ones and the Stan Lee ones, those are the two that do feel like they create a premium on those books for sure. Like I would say like any Stan Lee signature, like is going to add at least $400 to $500, like over the fair market value of the grade. But I think a lot of times people like double it depending on, you know, the book itself.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see one. I have a vested interest in this, so full disclosure. I sent in, I think, 5 or 6 cards to the McFarlane signing because of the CGC relationship. Now you could send in Marvel cards to get signed by the artist when they do CGC signings. So like McFarlane's doing the CGC signing right now, and you could submit cards to get signed for that. And I saw a signed McFarlane card at NYCC, and it looked really good. Like it looked really, really good. I was like, ooh, I'm excited to get mine back. And it was one of the cards that I sent in. I'll see if I can find it on my phone. I'm excited to also see where that goes in the future. Like CGC has a lot of cool people in for signing events. And if I potentially can send Marvel cards in to have signed.
Are they giving gold labels or whatever for?
They're doing yellow labels, and for the
cool.
McFarlane, they came up with a McFarlane specific scroll. This one isn't SLAD, but this is what. Let me make myself big.
I wonder if that, like, imagine getting some of the 90 MU signed and stuff like. Yeah, that's cool for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool
with a white paint pen like that. Like,
yeah, I mean, I love on
I sent this exact card in, so I'm hoping he signs it like that.
He's got a great signature, and then on the comics, he's got so much more space to where it's like big and loopy, and
yeah.
You know, and there's somewhere he does like yellow, like it's like a yellow marker or whatever. It's badass on like a black cover. I mean, it's awesome.
I wonder if getting 90 MU, you know, signed cards and stuff like that would. I could imagine that would start to add a decent premium on a lot.
The first one that pops into my head is the brown suit Wolverine from 90 MU because that's Jim Lee.
Right. Yeah. If you could get like something like that, that would be pretty awesome.
And I've seen, this wasn't through CGC, but one of the, when Robert Downey Jr. did that charity signing, which I missed like 2 years ago or a year ago, people sent in the Iron Man card from 90 MU and then had PSA Authenticate grade it. And they sell for a ton. And it looks really cool. He signed in like a red ink. Right. It looks really good on the Iron Man card.
Yeah, that could be a good play, I feel like. Because
there
can't be that many, right?
If an actor comes in, I would rather have their signature on a card than a comic.
Yeah, I would too.
Like, I would rather send in a Scarlet Witch card to have Elizabeth Olsen sign than I would like pick your random Scarlet Witch variant cover or whatever.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. To me, he's the most important one just because he really kickstarted the whole Marvel movie universe. I mean, if Iron Man flopped, then they probably don't do any of the other, like it just kickstarted everything. And I'm not saying it was all him, but it was a lot him. I mean, he did a great job.
Yeah, but I'm curious to see what those cards sell for, though. To Mickey's point, like, because it was 125 a card, I think, to have the signature and grade 8, like the whole 9 yards. It was 125 a card.
Are you going to try to sell just as like a test, like just to see what happens? Like, just
So
to
I
sell a
sent,
couple?
I think I sent 5 cards or 6 cards. I don't remember. And I sent duplicates. Like
Yeah.
I sent in like that 90
Yeah.
comic images. I sent like 2 of the same cards. Like there's one that's the Hulk 340 cover. I sent 2 of those in, and my plan was to sell one, keep one. And same
Yeah.
with like a Spider-Man. There was a Spider-Man one. I think I sent 2 copies of it in, and it was like sell one, keep one type thing. So yeah, I definitely plan on selling a couple of them. That's why I sent 6 in. I don't
Yeah.
need 6. I
Right.
purposely set extra just to kind of see, like, is this viable?
Yeah, it's a good test run.
But to me, the interesting aspect of it isn't so much the artists; it's the actors, when they have actors come in and have actors sign cards, because you
Yeah.
don't see that a lot, in the Marvel card world.
Well, it's definitely like it
Especially on
feels,
card.
yeah, it feels like a more appropriate's not the right word, but like, yeah, there's a lot of people that, when it's like Robert Downey Jr. signing a comic book, it feels like, well, it's like he didn't write the comic book or draw it, so it's like his signature doesn't feel as appropriate. But on a card, people aren't so concerned with like, oh, well, Jim Lee did the art. It's more of like, this is just a pure collectible thing, which feels cooler to have like the actor on it all of a sudden.
Yeah, for sure. So I just think there's a lot of cool spaces they could go with that, artist wise too. Like, if they had Peach in, Peach doesn't have a ton. Well, actually, she had a whole set, X-Men anime. But like sending in Peach cards to get autographed, and there are autograph pack pulled Peach cards. I have one for Spider-Gwen laying around here somewhere. But yeah, same Jim Lee. Like I could see them getting tons of. 92 X-Men Series 1. I would send a boatload of stuff in to have Jim Lee's signature on from that set alone. And same thing. And maybe this is just me. I would rather have him sign one of these than like an X-Men 1. I don't know why that is,
sure.
but I don't know. But I can see them doing some cool stuff with that potentially. Is anyone sending Funko Pops in the PSA to be graded?
Never got into those. That's the one. I feel like I've got everything except for Funko Pops. I just never got into it. Nothing against them, but just never got into those.
Yeah, I have like 2. But
yeah, I have like the amount that you're supposed to have, just to have some nerdy ones on the desk or whatever.
Yeah, it's like on the desk,
Yeah, I have a couple of work. Like I have some Mandalorian ones. My wife has some Scarlet Witch ones. The only like collection I have is I'm a big fan of Critical Role, and they did Funko Pops. So like I have their whole cast and crew, whatever, all the characters that's sitting down behind me on a shelf.
This is my one that's like, I don't know if this is like sacrilege that I actually took it out of the box and put it on.
I take mine out of the box. Yeah. That being said, I think it was brilliant by PSA to grade them. Especially having after walking out of New York City Comic Con, I had a whole different respect for how I knew Funkos were like super popular and super collectible. Don't get me wrong. I don't think I understood the level until I went to New York City Comic Con and like actually saw it in person of how insane that market actually is. I have no idea what they sell for in the secondary market, anything like that, but just the amount of people that had bags that were the size of me lugging them around through New York City Comic Con, just filled with Funko Pops, was insane to me.
Wow.
Swags, you've probably seen that. You've been to San Diego, right?
Well, yeah. It is crazy. It does make me think like, oh, there are so many more people who pick up Funkos than buy comic books. That seems, anecdotally true, at least, but I think we almost maybe even chatted about this a little bit, because I feel like it's just one of those things, like more average people would just have a Funko on their desk for fun, than a whatever, a comic in a CGC case, right? Like, so it is interesting. And but yeah, it's funny with like the graded thing, because it makes sense, because it's just a natural, like, I mean, if there's a collectible out there, then a grading company should probably be grading it, because that's what people want. But I guess it's similar to graded like video games or VHS, where like the box comes into play in terms of the grade and all that. And so, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I just, knowing how many Funko Pops are out there, it's from a business standpoint, it's just like, okay, PSA, yeah, smart play by you guys. I see
Right.
what you were doing.
Yeah.
Plus, the other aspect of those is a lot of them get autographed, and PSA can authenticate the autograph because they have autograph authentication. So I can see a lot of people sending in just for that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I got this sound signed by this actor at a con or whatever, and I want it PSA authenticated for potential collectability / resale down the line. I just think it could be. I don't know. I don't know what they're getting. They don't have population. They don't have a census up yet for it. I'd be very curious to kind of look at those numbers once they start firing up. And I don't know crap about Funko Pops from a collectability standpoint, other than buy the couple that look cool. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I assume they must have limited ones, right? Like numbered
Oh
ones.
yeah, convention exclusives. That's what you go
Yeah,
to New
yeah.
York City Comic Con, and I'm sure San Diego is the same way. People line up for hours to get access to the convention exclusive whatevers.
Yeah,
and
so
they
it's
sell
not
out
like
super
it's
fast.
not like a Beanie Baby situation where you don't really know kind of like what's rare and what's not. Like it sounds like they've done kind of like serial numbered stuff, or there's 500 of these or 100 of these or whatever.
I don't know if they've ever actually done straight serial numbered stuff before. That part I don't know, but I know that they've done tons of convention exclusives, which
Yeah.
are more limited. I think they're general releases that just pop up on Amazon. But there's been ones like on occasion that I'll be like, oh, that looks cool, and I'll see like it's a Target exclusive, and I'll be like, okay, because it like instantly sells out.
Yeah, I don't know what like the most expensive ones are. I think that they're pretty random though. Like they're like
It is because it's based off rarity, not so much
right.
like the character.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
I know my wife loves She-Ra, and for the longest time, the only She-Ra pop that was out there was from San Diego Comic Con from like 5 years ago, and it sold for like $300 to $500 in the box. And I'm like, nope, you're not gonna get that one.
Yeah.
Since then, more have come out, and I got her one for her desk or whatever. But to your point, though, I do think if you looked at the most expensive Funkos, it's probably stuff people have never heard of before. It's like, wait, what? It's like this random. It's like this third string character from some random anime that like 4 people watched.
Totally.
And it's like $5,000.
Totally. I think
like
I think it literally is that, because I think at some point, I don't know when, but I know for a fact that at one point in my life, I did do like a Google rabbit hole where I just was curious, and I was like, what are the most expensive Funkos? And I like literally like didn't know the characters of like, a handful of them, which was, pretty wild, because I think they are really just random anime ones.
Oh, people working the FTX angle. Lewis Hamilton Funko Pop has the FTX logo on his hat.
Oh, spec buy right there.
And it's his first Funko. Oh, look at the angles on Joshua. Pump and dumping Lewis Hamilton FTX logoed Funkos.
Everything is spec nowadays. It's like
that's the bailout. That's the bailout that they would need right there. Maybe they can make their money back with Funko Pops.
Funko NFTs. Oh, we got it all. This is like the Mad Libs of Pump and Dump. Funkos, NFTs, FTX, PSA. We're hitting F1. We got in there. We're just nailing all of them. Nailing all.
I think part of the, I don't want to call it an issue, but it's kind of obvious that you have all of these kind of mass produced scarcity items, whether it be NFTs or cards or comics or Funkos. It's like, and then there's more and more. It's like there's only so much money to go around unless you just keep on getting more and more people into collectible stuff. But I think that'll be kind of an interesting kind of use case or whatever. Like 20 years down the road, we're gonna look back and it's be like, it's going to be like, man, they were just manufacturing all this stuff, like all these limited things or so many limited things. Or will it just kind of be like, this is the new world and this is how it works. And, there's a market for all of it. I mean, I don't think any of it's going away.
Well, Funko seems like they're in a good spot because they can just like, do they care about their secondary market? I mean, maybe to a degree, but not necessarily, but because their new lines are just whatever is
like
cool,
$15
right?
a piece. Like it's whatever.
Yeah. And they can just, whatever is popular, they will make the Funko for that. So they're safe in terms of like IP, I think. But yeah, I mean, like, if Marvel and comic books, they have to work a little bit harder, because it's like, generally speaking, I think Spider-Man will be a popular character forever, but like they, in theory, their IP could be not cool one day.
Yeah, Funko's just riding off everyone else's IP.
Yeah, they just make whatever is popular. So that they're safe.
The only person winning is whoever is the lawyer that negotiates Funko's third-party licensing agreements.
Yeah,
that guy or girl must be busy for a life.
yeah, they will always have work for sure.
I can imagine those deals have to be complicated because I know Marvel's super controlling over like how, same with Star Wars, like how you use their characters and how they look, and you can only do certain things. I've heard horror stories from like the video game side of things on like how they portray the characters. I wonder how complex those get on that side of things for Funkos.
Yeah, probably pretty scrutinized, but I think at this point they got to have some kind of autopilot going on over there.
I think too,
Yeah.
if it sells a lot, they just want, and they're probably like Disney owns all that. So I'm sure they're like, we'll take 90% or whatever. Like it's like Amazon negotiating with like the monster company. I'm sure they're like, sure, you can use our license, but we're just going to take the vast majority of the money. You know, it's fine.
I didn't know this. All Marvel Pops have to be bobbleheads. I was not aware of that.
I didn't know that Pops didn't have bobbleheads, but
yeah,
this one has a bobblehead. Yeah,
that's because you probably only have Marvel ones.
This is the only, this one, and yeah, I got a Harley Quinn one. Oh, you're right, that's not bobblehead. So DC,
Yeah,
I guess
I have a Star Wars
cool.
one. I have a Baby Yoda sitting on my desk, and he's a bobblehead. So I wonder if it's a Disney thing.
Maybe the bobblehead, because they probably merchandise to other companies for other toys and stuff. So maybe the bobblehead is the thing that's like, this is the ownable thing that Funko has with this IP.
Yeah,
as a non-compete.
Well, excuse me, I don't have a cough tonight. Let's dive into one last topic and then we'll kind of wrap things up, because and I wasn't planning on going here, but it kind of leads into this actually. Pops got big on Whatnot, which has been a hot topic button in the sports card world. I don't know. Have you talked about the whole 50K thing at all, Dustin? There's been so many videos about so many different topics from all of us. I don't know. Have you got into that at all yet, or no?
I just made like a parody video that
well, that's right. You did your Raleigh. I got $38 to spend at the Raleigh card show.
I titled it up, I've got 50K to spend at Raleigh, and then I just put parody in the title so that people wouldn't.
Yeah. So, Swaggle, I don't know how much you've seen of this, but like Whatnot's been doing these 50K spending challenges where they basically took, I don't know, what would you say, Dustin? Like 6, I don't remember how many altogether, but like basically the top sports card influencers were like, here's 50K, go to these couple big card shows.
Yeah.
And they were having like an online card show last weekend. And the point was they went and bought it, and then they're all Whatnot sellers. So they sold on Whatnot that weekend as part of like this weekend event. So it wasn't just like go buy this stuff randomly and you get to keep it. And no, I don't really know what the business arrangement was, like if Whatnot got the money back on the stuff that was sold or how all that worked. Have they done anything? They've caught a lot of heat for it. I shouldn't say heat. People have been questioning it. I personally don't see a major issue with it. It's a marketing expense. I'm sure that there's a way that they're managing their books or whatever. But I also know that on the comic side, Whatnot, are they viewed as villains? Like I see a lot of like clickbait thumbnails about like down with Whatnot from comic book influencers.
Yeah, it depends on what side of the aisle you fall on. I mean, I think like
team not Whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think like everything, like the silent majority, like 90% of people probably really don't care, and then you have like two very loud, team people against each other. But yeah, Whatnot is interesting, and it definitely has like people who think it's bad for the hobby, specifically comic books. I made a video where I talked about it and just talked a little bit about like the whole like influencer angle and that whole thing, and kind of said my side of it and how I felt about it. And I just always quote like the Marshall McLuhan thing, where it's like, I just feel like the medium is the message, and I just think that the medium itself is maybe not the best for collectibles, but that's not to say that they didn't have the right to make it and it's not a bad thing. It's like how Twitter is probably not the best thing for humanity, but that doesn't mean that Twitter shouldn't exist, So it's just one of those that's kind of my general feeling on it. But what's the card feeling about, like, what was the problem with giving them 50K and then like having them sell and whatnot? I guess like what's the real argument about why it's bad? Because I did feel the negative backlash.
I mean, I think it kind of goes back to kind of the same thing you're seeing on the comic side. I think it's more about like anti-influencer than it is about Whatnot spending the 50K. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
It's like, why does this guy get the 50K?
Right.
I think it's almost more that. Dustin, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that kind of what? I don't know that people were mad
Well,
so much.
and also the disclosure part. I think that some people had like, did they say like Whatnot gave me 50,000, or was it like I'm here with 50,000? You know, like I don't know if that was disclosed.
I don't know that I watched every single one. I watched like
I didn't watch. I only watched
them.
one of them, I think. Yeah.
I watched Ryan's, I watched Jeff's, and I watched one other one. I don't remember which one. And in every one of them, it's like, we're here today, 50K spending challenge for Whatnot. You know, all these cards will be for sale on Whatnot at their card show live or whatever this coming weekend. So I don't know if that was so much the problem. I think it was more just like a lot of like, oh, here's this influencer just having 50K handed to them to go spend on whatever they want.
I guess it's
and once again, we don't know like the business deal. So like, there's been speculation that they got the 50K, but then all that inventory that they sold just went back to Whatnot. So it's really, they're just getting the video out of it. And probably, I'm sure they got like your travel expenses covered and some other little odds and ends of things. Once again, I guess maybe, I'm purely speculating here.
Maybe it's maybe
different for each individual influencer.
Right. I guess maybe it's just sort of like that whole, like kind of promoting that kind of YOLO lifestyle, get rich in cards vibes, right? I'm like dropping 50K, let's go, you know, that feeling, which I think maybe people are kind of turned off by.
And I think that people that are not interested in that sort of card content, because some people are not a fan of like, I just dropped $8,000 in this card and then I flipped it for 12. And then, you know, we just, you know, that they're not into that. So when you see something like this, it's like, okay, I already didn't like this. And then it's not your money, you know, then you're getting 50,000, you know, and you're dumping it in, you know, and so I think that's probably part of it too. You know, if you're not a fan of that content, I'm not really against kind of creative marketing type stuff. I mean, in the collectible space, I don't think that's necessarily, I mean, it is what, you know, I mean, it's like, it's their money to spend on marketing. So, I think that it's also just interesting that it's that popular, I guess, you know, is live streaming going to be kind of like the future of how people buy stuff and buy collectibles? It's just the amount of, you know, and look, maybe it's people getting tired of the auction online experience. They want a different type of experience. That part really interests me, kind of just the consumer behavior part. Is this just kind of flash in the pan where live streaming sales is kind of like a cool thing? Or is it going to be how it's done, you know, moving forward, you know, the majority of shopping for collectibles? I don't know. I just think that part's interesting.
I think it's more about the following of the individual influencer will sustain like their store. I worry more about like the random guy that decides to hop on there and be like, let me give this Whatnot thing a try that has little to no following going into it. But I think like Card Collector 2 will always be able to sell on Whatnot, you know, as long as the platform exists, or like Nerdy Girl or Comic Tom or whatever, because they just have a built-in audience no matter where they go.
I wonder if almost like the inevitable end of it, because to me, I just think like whenever there's like a tech advancement or something, it all comes down to like making this sort of the most efficient way to get things. If it becomes the most efficient way to buy collectibles, then inevitably it'll win out. And I almost wonder if it's like, does Whatnot become like an Amazon where like, why even have individual streamers? Like, why not just have like Whatnot be the stream itself?
And if you're a seller or Home Shopping Network.
Yeah. Like essentially like why, like if you're a seller, you just give your stuff at cost to Whatnot and they just
I think
sell everything.
The magic to Whatnot is the influencer, is the
right?
seller.
But you would still have like people who are like the face on your home shopping, you know, on the channel. You'd still have these, like, influencers that are selling. I just wonder
if it's probably because you could have 50 people selling at once versus one person selling at once at that point.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah,
I think and we haven't really seen what eBay Live looks like. That's their competition to this. They're just kind of getting their feet wet in it. I don't know if maybe eBay Live is going to be more like that, or if it's going to be like there could be 100,000 people streaming at once on eBay Live is like their end goal, or if it's more like, hey, we're doing an eBay Live this weekend. We're going to cycle in Sports Card Dad, Flipping Steve, Neo, and Swaggle Haas this Saturday night across a 4-hour period or whatever, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know that they know. I don't know that they've announced yet kind of where it goes. Medio says, I'm pretty over the I spent X amount on you insert cards or comics here. I want to see things rather than how much money people throw at stuff.
Right.
The whole trick behind this is, and I'm saying this strictly from the content creator side, a thumbnail and title like that is going to get more clicks and views than if I just do like, hey, mail day video or whatever.
Yeah, mail day
Totally.
number 181. You know, it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
just doesn't
A
work.
lot of this nonsense like this that people either don't like or get tired of or whatever. There's a segment, and I get it because I get sick of some of that stuff too. But I mean, we can all, the three of us can all see YouTube analytics. We know if we put something like that on a YouTube thumbnail, it's gonna outperform, you know, I bought this stuff for my PC collection is gonna get like 2,000 views. If I put, I just spent 5K on my Grail comic, and it's the same video, but it's just titled and worded differently, it's going to get probably double the traction. Like it's really as simple as that.
As long as it's true. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like you might have, you might have put it in a way where it's like, whoa, but it's just, but that's what the video is about. I mean, it's not like, it's like I spent $100 grand on a comic book, and then you turn on the video and it's like, actually it was $5. I mean, like then people are gonna be pissed,
Yeah. When I bought my Hulk 181, my thumbnail was like biggest purchase ever, something like that, $5,000 plus, or I don't remember what it was. It was a year ago that I bought it or whatever the case might be. I can make that exact same video and just title it like, hey, new comic book pickups. And it's going to get like 25% of the views that it would otherwise. I mean, it's really, I mean, as dumb as it sounds, it's what it really comes down to. I mean, you're seeing the same thing right now. People talk about like negative content. Why is there so much nonsense going on? Why do people keep making videos about the drama rather than about and you're seeing the same thing on the comic book side, because I follow a lot of the stuff. A lot of the stuff right now is more about the drama in either space than it is about the actual collectible. And I think a lot of that simply comes down to, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I make a video about PSA kicking Ludkins off the platform because their group submitter went bad, that's going to get I'm going to be rewarded mentally, financially, as a content creator. That's going to get 6, 7, 8,000 views compared to if I'm like, hey, here's my new PC side project that I'm working on, and it gets 1,500 views. So it's like you're encouraged, whether you even realize it or not as a content creator, you're encouraged to keep making the content that gets traction, whether you want to or not. Like you just fall into the trap without even realizing it sometimes.
And it goes the other way. Look, if mail day number 182 got 7,000 views, that's what we would title it at. We wouldn't title like we would title it mail day number 182 or whatever, but that's just not how it works. So I don't understand. People get all upset about it, but it's like, this is just the game that we are playing. That's just it.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if like maybe like some of the framing of like some of those like 50K, I went to a sports card show, whatever. Like I wonder if like the frame was like, oh, hey guys, like why not give me 50K? I'm going to buy all these cards and then we're going to do $1 auctions, and they're likely going to go under fair market value. But this is a cool way to like give back, like get a chance to own this expensive card for cheap. Like maybe that would have been a better.
I mean, I think that's what they did though. I mean, I don't know how the sellers sold them individually. I don't know if they were mandated to sell a certain way. But they were all sold on, everything that was bought in those challenges was sold on Whatnot at auction. I don't know what the price points were, but I don't know if it was marketed that way. But it's the same thing, and I'm sure you see this on the comic book side too. There's tons of stuff that sells on that platform way under market value, but then there's tons of stuff that you're like, wait, this is like a $3 book. Why is it going for $15?
Totally. And it really, I think it just comes down to room size. Like if you're someone who can get 200, 300 people in a room, then you're probably going to do okay. But if you're someone who gets 20 people in the room, well, you better not put up your big key, whatever.
That's why you always, I think, see $1 stuff in that format, because it's less risky. If you put a $20 book up and it sells for 15, it's kind of like, well, whatever.
And I think that
$1 book up and it goes for 500, you're probably like, crap.
Yeah. And I think that then that's like one of the frustrating things, I think, for a lot of people, because it's self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's like, if I'm a small Whatnotter and like I can only ever get 15 people in my thing, well, I'm only ever going to put up stuff that I don't mind selling for $1. And then how can I attract more people? And then like the big influencer, they just get more and more people because Whatnot's going to give them an AF-15 to like just put
or $50,000 to go spend on inventory.
Yeah. So it's like, so then it just, like all things, like the bigger get bigger, and then the smaller sellers can't really
Yeah.
compete.
I almost wonder too, like the overcomp stuff, like that $5 stuff that sells for 15 or whatever. I almost wonder how much of that is like the buyer knows. Like, I'm sure some of it's like a nature of the beast of that platform is like you get caught up in the moment and you overbid because it's just like you don't have time to go check 130 point or GPA or
Yeah.
whatever. And you're just kind of caught up and you're like, oh, I want it. Some of it is definitely that, but I wonder if some of it's just like, especially for the larger followers, whether it's cards or comics on the influencer side, it's like, you know what, I really like this guy's content. If I overpay $5 for this book, so be it. I've enjoyed 5,000 hours of their content over the last year, like almost
Yeah.
like a tip. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For lack
Yeah.
of a better term.
No, I think that's a good way to look at it. It's like if I went into your whatnot, I'd be like, oh, like I'm happy to pay a little more for Neo's card because yeah, it's like a tip, you know.
Yeah.
That is a good point.
Oh, go ahead, that's one.
No, I was just going to say that is a good point. I mean, maybe there's kind of like that the intimacy of the live stream, and you're like, oh, cool. You kind of feel a connection to that person that you've been watching or whatever. That does make sense.
Yeah, and I've never bought or sold on Whatnot. I have an account. I've like logged in to like get a vibe for it, but I've never bought or sold a single thing on Whatnot. For me, it's more the time aspect of it. I just don't have time to like have Whatnot streaming on my phone.
Yeah.
And just sit there and like lock in on an auction and just, you know, be like, oh, cool, what's coming up next or whatever, you know.
Totally.
Even an A1 claim sale, I think we talked about this before, actually, Swaggle House. Like the nice thing about it, like a traditional comic claim sale is I could just glance down and look at the wall like every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And just see if there's like a cover that I want. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's an ASM 129. I might be interested in that. Let me like semi pay attention or ask in chat like what the price is on this. Like I don't need to be 100% locked in on it. I just need to glance down at like A1 on Wednesdays and Fridays and be like, oh, okay, cool. There's nothing on that wall. I'll check back again in like 15 minutes. Let me mute this and go do what I'm doing and then circle back to it in a little bit.
Yeah. It's like, I don't have an hour to wait through like 30 lots, you know, that are for comics I don't care about, you know, to maybe get to the one that I'm hoping like I might find, you know, because even in other traditional auction spaces, let's say you went to like heritage auctions or something, at least you know what's coming up. Like a lot of times and Whatnot, people don't do the work to like list everything coming up. So it's just it's hard to kind of sit through it all.
Yeah. And I lied. I want to get the one last thing before we kind of wrap up here. Does it feel like, and once again, I'm just kind of going off of, I watch a lot of comic book content and I'm going to tie this into sports cards too, because there's definitely been a movement lately. We kind of talked about this backstage right when we first started. I don't want to say like Rudy kicked it off or whatever, but there feels like over the last month or so that there's been, I don't want to call it like a revolt, but like collectors take back their hobby type thing. On the comic side, I'm seeing a lot of like influencer versus collector, kind of tying back into this Whatnot stuff too. It's kind of why I wanted to bring this in. And you know, you're seeing it on the MTG side with this like anti-Hasbro, like don't go buy the product, this, that, and the other thing. Do you feel like on the comic book world that that's like, it's kind of like, let's, you know, this collector versus establishment mentality is kind of growing?
I definitely think it's, yes, the answer to your question is yes. I feel like it's growing, or maybe people are, maybe it was always there and there's just more of like kind of an uproar of it. And now it feels like the appropriate time. I think I saw some people kind of talking in the chat as we were talking about the 50K thing, where it's like, yeah, I mean, it's just hard to like, you know, flaunt money in when times are tough. And similarly, like, as you know, as you talk about your question, where it's like these people who are like kind of selling to make money in comics versus like people who just like want to collect and have stuff in their collection. I think there is this like, you know, headbutting culture of it, and I don't know where it goes, you know, and it's kind of a weird thing too, because it's like, yeah, maybe the influencer people are kind of seen as like the antagonists in that situation, but it's such a fine line, because it's like clearly people have businesses and sell comics or cards or whatever it is. Like people make money in this thing, and so I don't know if people just they just don't like to know that. Like maybe it was always just a little bit better when there was a little bit of a divide of this idea of like, I just showed up to the card show and just this dealer has all these cards. I'm not thinking about that they bought it for pennies off of somebody else. You know, I don't want to know that, you know. So
You
I
want to
don't
see how
know.
the sausage is made.
Yeah, kinda. But is that how you guys feel?
Yeah, I'll let Dustin chime in here in a second. But yeah, it feels like there's definitely like a, we need to take back our hobby or whatever. And I don't know if it's just that, people are sick of a lot of like the nonsense that's going on right now across both spaces or what, but it definitely feels like that sentiment is growing. I mean, Dustin, you did basically a mini rant video on this the other day that we kind of jokingly with you off the start. But I mean, I feel like on the sports card side, the vibes are strong of like, there's definitely, I'm actually going to compare, I'm watching Andor a lot. Like Andor is freaking fantastic on Disney Plus. If you're not watching it, it definitely feels like the spark of the rebellion and like the establishments, the evil empire. And the Rebel Alliance is growing to kind of take down the Death Star, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Dustin, I feel like you have intimate knowledge on this because you just did the rant video on it on Thursday or Friday, whenever that was.
Well, I think kind of coupled with Rudy kind of going full bore on Hasbro for overprinting and really kind of making it clear that they're going to print to the moon. And this is something that we've seen on the sports card side. I got some pushback where it's like, hey, that situation is very different than sports cards. But I think that it's not that different in the sense that sports cards printing has really been ramped up. We've seen it in a lot of different ways. Select being an example of something that was hobby only, and then it goes to retail, and then it's like, whoa, what are we doing? Panini and Topps, and they're now granted they're trying to print to demand, but the problem is it doesn't happen quick enough. It's like when the demand is there, the product's not there. So now we're like 2 years later and they're like, oh, okay, yes, let's go ahead and meet that demand. And the demand is not the same. That's shifted, to where I don't want to see just all new product be garbage. Like, I don't want to say garbage, but 91, 92, 93, when you go back, I mean, and not that everything has to be worth money and all of that, but it would be nice to have some rarity. And, when you see it kind of just going in the direction of we're just going to print everything to the moon, then yeah, you kind of want to push back a little bit. So with Rudy's kind of rant, I think that kind of inspired me to, talk. I've been talking about that though for a couple of years with new products on the sports card side. And then it kind of goes to other parts of just companies where it's like, look, if you've got higher ups that are flexing on, the average collector / speculator, whatever. Yeah. During these times, it's just not great timing. It's not great optics when, you're a multimillionaire and you're flexing on your customers basically. And it's like, yeah, maybe save that when, for like boom times or whatever, when nobody cares. Yeah. And it's just not good timing right now for that.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And I agree. Like the Hasbro to sports card things, I could see where people be like, it's not apples to apples, but I think it's closer than people want to realize. And I think, I brought up the Select thing in my video when I talked about it. I think that's like literally the thing you could point at and be like, hey, this is Panini doing exactly what Hasbro's doing right now on a more micro scale. And on the sports card side, it's scary because, and once again, I talked about this in the video that I did on it, Panini doesn't care. Like they have no long-term vested interest in this. Like their whole goal, they know they're out. Like whether it's next month, tomorrow, or a year from now, we know that they're leaving in some shape or form. So they don't care. They have no vested interest in the long-term stability of it, like a Fanatics does. You would think Hasbro would, but it seems like that they don't to some degree or another. So it's just kind of an interesting space.
And so now you see the pushback of like, hey, vote with your wallet. Don't buy this crap. And whatever that is, whether it be manufacturing or grading or, whatever, hobby supplies or whatever the hell, it's like, if they're going to treat us like that, then vote with your wallet. You are kind of seeing some pushback.
Yeah. And I was feeling it too. Like part of it was, I've done a couple retail rips lately, which I don't normally open a ton of wax, but it's like, it was available. It's $60 for a couple boxes, whatever, I'll open some cards. I still like to open packs. And you open them and it's like every card's damaged and like everything's junk. And you're just like I did those couple videos. I recorded them like right in a row. They didn't post right away. And then Rudy did that video on Hasbro. And, and it kind of like all, to your point, it kind of like all clicked at once. It was like, you know what? Like, yeah, kind of fuck these guys. Like, what are, like, at least the card company, at least Panini specifically in that case, was just kind of like, what am I doing? Like, I just spent like $150 on this, and I opened a bunch of cards that were like dinged and scrapes and scratched, like straight from the
especially
pack.
when especially when like 4 years ago, what was a hobby box of Prism? Like $200? You know, I mean, like it was dramatically lower, dramatically.
Yeah. It's so funny. It's like I had the experience and I didn't even know this. Like like I said at the beginning, like I do work for Magic, but it was only recently, like maybe it was like, I don't know, 4 months ago or something. I went into a card store and I was interested. I was like, oh, I kind of want to buy like the stuff I've worked on. And so I asked the dude, I was like, so like what's the deal like with, you know, Dominaria box or whatever? And he's like, well, okay, the collector booster box, like that's one that has like all like the expensive cards, and it's like, okay, but what is the draft box? It's like, well, that's if you want to like buy and play the game. And it's like, okay, and then there's also the booster box that you can get, and then it's like, then he had one other box, and I was just like, why is there 4 boxes? Like what is this? Like, what do you mean that I would have different ones? Like, why wouldn't I? It's like, to me, it was like, isn't there just one? Here's the expansion that came out. Here's the one set that came out. Like, why are you printing so many different, very specific boxes? And I think even in one of the latest sets, they were adding another one. I think Rudy was talking about that, or they were going to do like another specific type of box. And I'm like, this seems really like
not good.
Not good, right? Yeah, this seems like not a healthy way to kind of release a new set. That we have all these different versions. And I don't know if sports cards is kind of like that, but at least in the Magic space, I was like, that seems ridiculous.
Oh, it's for sure like that right now. Like, I don't know the numbers, but like, what is it, Dustin? There's like 55 101s of a single player out of Select or something stupid right now.
Well, like, that's the problem, is it's ruining, even if a draft class is incredible, even if even if these, like, who's the basketball guy? I can't pronounce, I don't remember his name. The guy next year that's supposed to be like
Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, like he's going to
print him to the moon and back.
Well, that's the problem. It's like, you know, Shaq rookies. You know, it's like Shaq is one of the greats, but I mean, you won't find any rookie cards really that are worth chasing outside of maybe a few. And then really what everybody chases are like autos or patch cards or stuff that came way later. You know, so that's the problem. Is it's like, and I'm not a new product guy. Like, I don't buy stuff right out of the gate typically, but I also would like to be able to go back on that play. Like, if that player is the next LeBron James or whatever, and I'm looking back at his cards, it'd be nice to get something. But then it's like, would I even bother with how they're doing it nowadays?
Yeah.
You know, what do I get in at? Like the color match, or like for which product? And yeah, I mean, it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier about like the Tom, if you collected Tom Brady, like what would your grail list be? Like, fast forward 20 years. Let's pretend Luka is the next LeBron or whatever. And Dustin and I both are fans of Luka. Like, what do you think his go-to top 4 cards are that isn't like an NT logo, man? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I have his.
There's like and he's 2018 before it even really got as bad as it is today.
Yeah,
you know, like his print runs in the grand scheme of things, they're bad, but it's not like what, to your point, what Victor Wembanyama stuff's going to look like next year.
Yeah, I think will be like the last, like, you know, the last set where it was actually, and there's a lot of parallels, but still, I think that's the last viable set. Yeah, go ahead, Swaggle.
No, does it just end up being like, yeah, the Luka card that comes in 2025 that no one was paying attention to and ends up with a low supply becomes kind of the card like 20 years from now that people chase or whatever?
I don't know if it'll go that extreme, because there is so much like nicer, higher end product that exists right now, like for Luka specifically. But Shaq, to like for Dustin's earlier example, there really wasn't like a good high end card for him, right? At least not that I could think of, Dustin. There wasn't even exquisite then. So you know what I mean? Like, that was like pre on card auto game used patch stuff. Whereas Luka had that stuff on release. So maybe if there's like whatever the next big thing that comes out is that we don't know exists yet, you know what I mean? Maybe that sneaks in, like, but it would be a card type that none of us are even considering right now. Like, that does not exist on the current market.
It's funny the comparison. I'm trying to think, like, it doesn't quite work in comics, but sometimes every now and again you get like a first appearance of a character who it's like they had like a first cameo and then a second cameo, and then they actually had a first full appearance, and then but they weren't like in their costume yet. And then this next book they are in the costume, and then the next one they take up the name. So there is this like split. Like,
Isn't that like Kamala Khan? Isn't she like that?
she might be. Adam Warlock is the character I think about a lot, who it's like that happens to him.
Even Kang, isn't Kang kind of like that a little bit? Because it's kind of like, which version do you want?
Yeah, you
to
can make that
agree?
argument, but at least I think Avengers 8 is like the card to go for. But
Yeah,
I always,
pump it, Swaggle.
what's that?
Pump Avengers 8.
Yeah. Avengers 8, everyone should buy it now. But like I think it's funny. I always say it's like running back by committee, which I feel like you guys would appreciate. Like
Yeah.
I feel like comic collectors don't appreciate when I say stuff like that, but I'm like, no, this is like the perfect fantasy football analogy right here, where it's like just all of the money is split amongst these different things so that you can never have one specific comic or card or whatever Shaq card that like goes to the moon.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if Kamala Khan was the one that I jumped to just because I remember, I think it was actually on one of your live streams. We were talking about, it was like around before that show was coming out. We were kind of talking about it, and there was like a lot of, I don't remember the specifics on that one, but I always knew it was one of those ones that was kind of like, there's no clear cut answer.
Yeah.
Per se, like which one is the one that goes spec on, and it kind of hurts all three of them or however many that there are.
Totally.
And I think it will be, to kind of what we're talking about. Like there's almost like a ceiling because it's spread out so much across so many different cards. Like not one true card will be like the one.
Right. Unless Luka Doncic himself says, "This is my only true card."
Yeah, if I had to guess, I think I would agree with you, Dustin. It would probably be something, if you're talking like non-auto, probably something color match. Like whether it's like his Prism Blue or Blue Mosaic or something Blue Select, just because everyone has that color match appeal to them to some degree or another.
Yeah,
but I still think like to your, like you have a Lucas Silver, like I think that'll still always be like the poor man's like.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, well, I kind of look at it as hopefully kind of like LeBron Topps Chrome, like base PSA 10 or whatever.
I think that's how I would view the silver almost.
Yeah, the silver, not
yeah,
the silver. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the population counts are way different, but the market's also way more watered down.
I think the Topps are about the same. I think they're about 2,100, if I have it right.
Oh, and a PSA 10 versus PSA 10? That could be. I didn't really think about that.
They're close. But who knows? Yeah. Like that's definitely like who the hell knows, speculating big time.
Because in the grand scheme of things, there's only going to be maybe one or two players out of this era that even really matter, like in each sport. Like that's usually what happens. Like sports cards is basically, modern sports cards anyways, is basically just one big game of hot potato, because most of these guys aren't going to be worth much in 5 years. Like, it's like the dirty secret that no one likes to say out loud, but like it's the truth. Go back and look at Paul Pierce was like one of the best NBA players of his era, and his cards are worth like practically nothing. Like, even Garnett. Like Garnett was a monster,
right?
And his stuff's not worth that much. Now, part of it is it's like the Shaq point almost. It's kind of like a nature of when their stuff came out. There wasn't really like good high end stuff to go after to some degree or another, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Dustin, where can people find you, and do you have anything spicy on the docket that they need to be on the lookout for?
I don't have anything too crazy, I don't think. I'm just trying to think. I have an idea for a video. I've got a few ideas. Yeah, so we'll see.
I don't know if you had anything hot in the hopper that was getting ready to that you need to point out.
Yeah, no, not really. I've got a couple of ideas. I put out 2 videos today, so I kind of have tomorrow off, and then Monday I'll have something else out. But yeah, my channel is the Sports Card Dad on IG. I'm at Sports Card Dad if you guys want to find me there.
Swaggle, give the people one last shot where they could track you down at.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Swaggle Haas Comics and Games. I mostly talk comics, so if maybe you're someone out there who's not so much into it, but you want to find out more, you can maybe hop over to my channel and learn a thing or two about comics. And thanks so much for having me on the stream.
Yeah. Do you have anything hot and spicy in the hopper? What's your next? Mondays? Is that your?
Yeah, Mondays.
You're like the The
Yeah,
market
Mondays.
when
Mondays
testing.
usually I go over like the Go Collect puts out, kind of like
Yeah.
a hot list. So I always kind of like go over that and talk about that. So I'll have that video coming up, and then I'm just trying to think anything in the pipeline. Nothing very specific. Nothing really super worth promoting. Other than hopefully at some point in the future, I will have a scam update video, and we can find some kind of resolution with that one.
What's the next index video that's marinating?
Well, I'm trying to get into that monthly rhythm. So usually I want to collect the data when we get the end of November. So like 2 weeks, I'll definitely do an update, and it'll be interesting to see. I have to assume that this month is less or will be less than last month. So we'll see.
Yeah. And those lines are starting to touch pre-pandemic levels now, right? Like we're getting close to like the trend line, right?
They're close. They're still above. But like when you look at the trend line and you think like, okay, well, there's like the margin of error. Like certainly there will be moments when it starts to test below trend line. So it'll be interesting to see like if we really dip in there. And I was trying to look at like, okay, the correlation of like when we were in 2020. You remember when like the pandemic really started, like in February and April, and like the stock market like went like that. I was looking at how comic books performed as well. And there was a little bit like those couple months did kind of go a little bit below trend line.
Sports cards was the same thing, but it rebounded way faster. It was like because sports cards were actually it's kind of no one really talks about it. I actually thought about making a video on this. Sports cards were actually trending way up prior to the pandemic starting. Like a lot of stuff was really heating up. Prices were increasing. And then you get to mid-March, the NBA shuts down and every chart goes whoop, like this. And then very quickly it shoots right back up again.
Yeah.
So there was this panic of like, wait, is the world about to end? And then it was like, oh, wait, no, I have a whole bunch of extra money.
That's similar. It sounds somewhat similar to at least what the trend line in the comic one shows. But it's also interesting too, because I was like really looking at it just the other day. And I think it actually came in the couple months after the stock market really went down. Cause like, so there's like that delay, right? Where it's like the stock market is instantaneous, right? Everyone sells right away, but it's like your comics, you can't liquidate it like you could a stock that same day. So there's like kind of this delay. So it'll be interesting to see like if there's those types of things that happen as well.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this a bunch. It seems like the sports card market kind of leads the tip of the spear, and then comics kind of lag behind a little bit. Like, both the pricing increases, decreases, the messes with the grading companies, random drama. Like, it seems like we kind of hit it all first. We break the ice for you guys, and then you guys kind of follow right behind.
Yeah. Which should be
sports card people are doing dumb stuff. It's time for comic book people to do dumb stuff. Like,
literally, it's like the canary in the coal mine, and it should just be like this thing where it's like if all of a sudden the sports card world like goes to zero, I'm just gonna sell everything. Like
well, what's funny too, I was talking to Rob about this, but comic book, I'm noticing that there's a lot of traction with like comic books up 80%, down 200% or whatever. Whereas like we were doing that content like 18 months ago. And now if you do it, you just get ripped. It's like,
oh, really?
Yeah,
because you just like comparing, making comparisons on pricing and people, just like, you're like, whoa, what, people get all freaked out about top 5 going up and down or whatever. That was bread and butter type stuff 18 months ago. And now it's just not as, I
think you could still
because I guess everyone's
going up and down. It's more the like what I'm surprised on the comic book side that I see a ton of, which you would get killed for this on the sports card side, is like you need to get these 5 keys right now.
Oh yeah.
Like I still see a lot of comic book content, and I still watch them too. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm like, what 5 keys are they talking about? I click on that thumbball every damn time
before it's too late.
I'm super guilty.
That video tomorrow, I would get killed.
Yeah, I'm super guilty of making those
channels of like, look at this idiot pumping that. Like, I would get decimated if I tried to make that video tomorrow.
I'm super guilty of having made those, some months back or whatever.
I made them back in the day about cards. I don't know, Dustin, did you? I'm sure you probably at some point in time made
something to
these 5 cards 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, especially starting out for sure.
I think it's all optics. I personally, I definitely would not make a video today that was titled "Buy these books now" or something to that effect. But what I would do is I would say, like, I would make a video that kind of like when you were talking about, like, say, like the Morbius book, where I'm like, I actually think here's a book that I think actually has corrected more than it should have, and that might be like in theory, I'm telling you here are 5 books to buy now. In theory, I'm telling you that, but like,
Yeah.
I
It's
wouldn't-
funny that you mentioned that
There's
because
also, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say there's also an element of like this is kind of like water cooler talk where we're all throwing around our opinions. So it's like, how do you make content if you're not throwing around like I think this might have, overcorrected or undercorrected or whatever? That's all part of the fun. That's all part of,
Yeah.
I watch people's videos to hear the same thing, like, oh, that's interesting. I like the way he thought of that, or I didn't think of this, or whatever. That's all part of the deal.
yeah.
it's funny that I did that video that you're referencing on Monday about like because I even kind of like flirted with like I think it's like 6 books that have like reset to 2020 prices or something was the thumbnail, which was kind of like as close as you could get to like top 5 books you should be instantly running out and spending all your money on. Like that's like the modern version of that thumbnail. And like normally if I do a strictly comic book video, it generally underperforms everything else on my channel, which is expected. Like I know my niche audience is cards, not comics.
Right.
Like it might get 1,500 views compared to 2,500 to 3,500, which is like what an average video does. That one started really slow. And then 2 days in, it went like this. And now it's got like, I think that video has like 5,000 views or something like that. Cause it went through like its normal paces of my audience. And then like it got to the people that like don't normally get recommended my content on the YouTube algo. And because it was like that, like, here's the 6 things thumbnail, like back to earlier, like the thumbnail on this nonsense is more important than anything else. Like that video picked up a lot of traction for a comic book video for me.
Sent it out to a lot of card people at first, and then it was like, these people don't want to watch this. Let me send it to some comic book people. And like, oh, here we go.
Like, oh, top 6 things. I got to click on this one. It's just interesting though, because I haven't really made a video titled or thumbnailed like that in a really long time. And to kind of like do one again, but not really like do the modern version of that. And then like, oh wait, yeah, this still works. Like from a content side of things, like this still gets clicks and views. It's
like Dustin said though, it's really like, I mean, if you, as long as it's honest and true and you're trying to, it's like your opinion, because it is like, I want to watch it too. Like I want to hear what you think, so it's really the framing. I think the framing matters a lot.
Yeah,
and
we always
it's the 5 minutes of disclosures you give at the beginning. It's
yeah,
like, I'm not telling you to go buy this.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do not buy this. This is stupid. Like I've said that in videos where like this is probably the dumbest thing you're going to hear today, but like whatever, whatever it's going to be. Yeah, which
is kind of good though, because it probably did. The reverse side of that is they probably got too extreme the other direction for a while there. People were being reckless on. Because it was easy back. You could literally just name 5 random things and they would.
It can't be a Don West style, the Don West, card TV, where it's like, we will sell out of this in the next 7 minutes.
Right.
Like call in or else, whatever. Yeah, it can't be like that.
But I do still see a lot of that, like, top 5 X things on the comic book side. You guys still seem to kind of flirt with that a little bit. Not you specifically. I'm just saying in general. I scroll through my subscription page on the comic book side of things, I still see some of those videos sneak in here and there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, talk about the delayed reaction. It'll be interesting to see, if those really start to get that pushback eventually. But we'll see.
So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for hanging out, chat. Sorry, not a ton of chat interaction tonight. It's hard to do when you have 2 guests on, and I think we kind of hit on a lot of the topics the chat was kind of talking about from a macro level perspective anyway. So go check out both those 2 gentlemen's channels if you don't already. The only thing I have is the normal Sunday video tomorrow. Beyond that, my content schedule for next week is completely blank. Everyone have a nice Thanksgiving, and we will talk to you guys and girls later. Peace.